Welcome back to the Bitcoin Treasuries podcast. I'm Tim Kotzman. I'm here with Shone Anstey, the CEO of Liquid Technologies, LQWD, on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Did I get that right?
You got that right. Thanks for having me on, Tim. It's exciting to be here.
Absolutely. Could you walk us back a little bit, just a little bit of your background and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, it's it's been a journey like everybody else. You discovered Bitcoin. I've been in Bitcoin since 2012. Discovered in 2011. Came by a kind of honesty because I worked in internet tech, which is a strange thing to say nowadays. But internet tech since the mid 90s on. So when people talked about it, it was like, well, of course we're gonna have native digital money for the internet. It seemed like the most normal thing. But then as you delve into it further, you start to get beyond the tech and start to learn about finance and how fiat and all the other intricacies that it brings down to, and we bring our own unique background to it in terms of how we view it and why I've gotten into it so aggressively at the start and didn't take a lot of convincing to get onto. But it's not because I'm some genius, because I worked in the internet tech space and really, like I was saying in the conference and on the panel, it's Bitcoin is an extension of the internet. And we can get into that because there's a lot of reasons why it has deep value beyond what people understand.
Maybe tell us a little bit about the journey from 2011, 2012 to today with Liquid. What was that journey like?
Yeah, so I mean, Liquid started in 2019. I had kept an eye on Lightning Network stuff, but my journey is, I mined stuff from here. I mined stuff from home. Ultimately saw that it was just, it was an incredible time in 2012 and 2013, seeing it go from 50 Bitcoin to 25 Bitcoin on a block and all those different things. Started another company that actually did deep analytics, and it does compete with chain analysis, but ultimately we saw that having to deal with regulators was going to be a thing. And I'm a very pragmatic person, willing to do tough things. So we had to deal with this stuff back in the internet days. So it's thankless and nobody likes you. But and then we also we acquired Canada's second largest. I hate to say crypto exchange because for me it was Bitcoin exchange, but I don't run that company anymore. And it's expanded into other things. But it is a successful company and known in Canada. And so that was all the way up into 2019, and then. Remained on the board of that company, which is also public and is done well for its shareholders over time, and started LQWD, and then took the success we have from the public markets, success we have from Bitcoin, and all those things, and tapped the capital markets for a second run at what we thought was going to be Lightning Network being that second layer to Bitcoin's first layer, and a lot of reasons why it makes sense from a peer-to-peer standpoint, where you're not going to have settlement off of Solana or Ethereum for a global payment network. But really Bitcoin focus, and the key with Lightning, and we run 20 nodes around the world, and we run a lot of transactions and climbing, is that you have to have a Bitcoin treasury. You have to have a Bitcoin treasury to participate. And the reason is that the number consists of nodes and channels require a node is just a server somewhere running the open source Lightning Network software, and you establish channels with other providers. But you must have Bitcoin on those channels. So there's a technical reason to have that. You simply just can't get away. So there's no way to open it without it. So you have to have a Bitcoin treasury in order to help produce that. Now, we don't put all of our Bitcoin on there. We see the Bitcoin treasury as a huge play for us, and opportunities to continue to underpin our balance sheet and then give us power and aggression to pivot and adjust and take advantage of our position because we have Bitcoin, and it's the future.
Can you kind of walk us through what is the Lightning Network? How do you view it, and where is it going? Because I know I'm not super familiar outside of that it exists, and I could explain it on a very high level to someone that isn't familiar with it. But I would bet over half of the audience probably could at least use a refresher or a crash course in the Lightning Network.
So, as we mentioned briefly, the Lightning Network consists of nodes and channels, and it's a native layer to Bitcoin. You can move Bitcoin off of main chain, layer one, the miners process the transaction, and your Bitcoin ends up on the Lightning Network. And the Lightning Network is a peer-to-peer network. So you and I may establish a peer-to-peer relationship, and we'll send Bitcoin on the Lightning very fast, very cheaply, can handle 25 million, 100 million transactions per second. It's kind of unlimited. It's really limited the network. But what it is a series of nodes and channels. Node is, you could run one, I could run one, but ultimately becoming more commercial. And a node is a server somewhere in the world running the open source Lightning Network software. And then within it, you establish channels with other node operators. And so when you want to send a transaction, it may go through multiple hops of node operators until it gets to its end point, and payment is complete in real time. So it settles on the peer to peer. There's no writing into the blockchain. We can close the channels, and the final balances between us can be written back to the main chain should we choose. A lot of people simply choose to keep it on the Lightning Network itself, and it's come a long way. It's been very iterative. You're having a lot more, it's become a successful network and growing very quickly in terms of its efficiency and scalability. Now, so it really solves Bitcoin scalability issue in terms of how do you handle a huge number of transactions, unlimited. And it fits in for a place where, back in the 90s, we had, response codes built into the internet. And the response code, for those who don't know what that is when you go to a website and you see page 404 not found, 404 page not found. That's a response code. And those are response codes that are built into the standards of the internet back in 89, 90, 91, et cetera. And they're built into every web browser, Firefox, Chrome, and every web server out there. And there are standards out there for payment required, but there has not been anything to date that could take advantage of it that could run at the scale of the internet, that anybody could hop onto, that anybody could use. There were no closed doors. There's no walled gardens. You didn't have to pay Google or Microsoft or have some third party act as until Bitcoin came along. And ultimately, Lightning Network on top of it allows for that payment stuff there. So, right now we see it continuing to be the open source payment layer. We have great hope for it, and we continue to have our some focus on it. Although we're really focused on treasuries because the race is on to get as much Bitcoin on the balance sheet, and you're never going to get another chance to come back and do that. And you need Bitcoin for the Lightning Network. So, how do you get paid on Lightning Network? Well, when you want to send a small transaction, you pay a few sats. You pay a few sats to go from hop to hop, and by the wallets that you may use, whether it be Breeze or open source, like a Coinbase wallet, whatever it may be, it will try to find either the cheapest route, the fastest route, the most reliable route, and you'll pay according, a few pennies, and it auto adjusts accordingly. So providers like us, we get paid in sats. So as we put our Bitcoin to work on the Lightning Network, we get sats back, and we have control over the Bitcoin there. It's all done in a non-custodial way. It's very clever. So we're not giving up control of our Bitcoin. So I'll stop there in case there's questions. I want to ramble on too much on the technical front, but I'm sure there might be some other questions. And we certainly talk about stablecoins coming to Lightning Network, which is of great interest.
Yeah, let's hit on that in a second. How is this going to go as the transactions increase on the Lightning Network? Will the sats that you pay become less? Like, would the transactions get cheaper, or are they already kind of as cheap as they're going to get? And it's just as the volume increases, obviously, the channel providers, if I'm saying it correctly, are making more money.
That what you just said is correct there. So ultimately, yeah, it is a variable price. There's no fixed price. It's an open market. So each provider can set how they want. And you may see, for us, we have 20 nodes. So we actually see transactions go across several of our nodes for in and out. And ultimately, because we have the best route, or the most reliable route, and we get paid for all that kind of stuff. Now, where stablecoins fits in, they have this thing called Taproot Digital Assets. It's just a fancy name, but it basically allows you to have Bitcoin is still the market that goes across, and you're able to send stable coins across to anybody else. So it'll be a great enhancement to US dollar, which, at the moment is not going to go away, although it's continued to melt away and due to bad policy decisions like governments typically do, but it is the world reserve currency. But ultimately, you can send Bitcoin, you could potentially send Tether, you can send, as a stable coin, you can do all kinds of things like that. So it is a true open payment rail of the internet, like the response code, 402 payment required, et cetera, and fits in there and really is an extension of the internet. And that actually gets down to, but for us, it's, very important we accumulate as much Bitcoin as we can. So we're aggressively pursuing a Bitcoin Treasury strategy. And we have a public listing. We've been at it for a while. We're known in the industry. We're known in the Lightning Network industry. Now we're going to leverage our position there to be aggressive with building our Bitcoin Treasury strategy going forward here. So to that end, some of the stuff that we talk about, or I like to talk about, is from my history. It's like, what is Bitcoin and why is it valuable? And so, we can get into that if you like, but that's one of the topics from my history I like to get into.
Yeah, let's get into that in a second. Bitcoin custody is evolving, and OnRamp leads this change with multi-institution custody, eliminating single points of failure. Instead of one institution or complex private keys, OnRamp secures your Bitcoin in a segregated, cold storage, multi-sig vault backed by 3 independent, institutional-grade custodians. No single custodian can move funds by themselves, providing an unprecedented level of security that traditional custody solutions simply can't match. Protected by a $100 million Lloyd's of London insurance policy, all transactions are fully auditable on-chain, never rehypothecated, and executed only at your explicit direction. This means complete transparency and control over your assets at all times. Beyond custody, OnRamp delivers comprehensive Bitcoin financial services, including lending, trading, inheritance planning, IRAs, and more. OnRamp functions as your private banking partner, coordinating key holder activity, removing technical burdens, and providing a personalized, trust-minimized experience tailored to your specific wealth preservation goals. Whether you're new to Bitcoin or an experienced holder, OnRamp's approach helps secure generational wealth with unmatched security and peace of mind. Visit onrampbitcoin.com today to learn more, sign up, or book a free consultation with their team of Bitcoin custody experts. Are you looking for comprehensive analytics on corporate Bitcoin adoption? Strategy Tracker delivers real-time insights into how companies are executing their Bitcoin strategies completely free. Monitor NAV premiums, cost basis performance, and track how corporate Bitcoin treasuries perform against the market. Upgrade to premium for just $3.99 a month and unlock exclusive benefits like detailed market rankings, real-time trading volume analysis, and advanced performance metrics for corporations embracing Bitcoin. Apply code KOTZ at checkout for 100% off your first month of premium. Strategy Tracker is your essential tool for measuring the effectiveness of corporate Bitcoin strategies. Visit strategytracker.com and gain the analytical edge in understanding the Bitcoin Treasury phenomenon. Join us at the Win in Las Vegas, February 23rd through the 26th, 2026 for Bitcoin for Corporations. Use code KOTZ when you grab your tickets at strategy.com, and we'll see you there. Can you kind of walk us through what has your Bitcoin Treasury strategy been to date as far as interacting with the capital markets, and then anything that you're able to say as far as what options might be on the table for moving forward?
No forward-looking statements, right? So
right.
that's the key. No forward-looking statements by far. No, but we've been aggressive early on. We raised capital early on. We went and bought Bitcoin at like at the time our average price is 48,000. We bought at different prices. We bought cents. We continue to use the stack as aggressively as we can. But we are, public companies are tied to the whims of the public market. So the sector's been turning, and now we're seeing a great opportunity. We have a very clean float. We have a very tight shareholder base. We have a management team that owns stock in the position. I put my own money in there, probably up to $500,000. I don't draw salary from the company. It all goes into where it's got to go. And so we also have really great shareholders behind it. So to that end, we've also, recently UTXO Management, they've taken a stake in us, an aggressive stake in us, and so they've been very, very supportive of our Bitcoin Treasury strategy, and we're happy to be working with them. And we have some plans, as all companies do, for go forward to continue to increase as much Bitcoin on the balance sheet and increase our MNAV and our Bitcoin per share or Sats per share aggressively. So if you're a potential shareholder, you get aggressive Bitcoin per share. You get leveraged up in that perspective, but you also have some exposure to the Lightning Network as well. And so you get the treasury play with some upside that could potentially be very blue sky. But in the meantime, the race is on, and we're squarely focused on expanding our Bitcoin treasuries as quickly as we can. And I want to make no promises on that, but certainly we are focused on that.
And I guess just to put a dot on when you say aggressive, have you guys been selling additional equity in the market or taking on any debt, or what does that look like to date
We
as far
have
as?
we have sold some. Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt, but that is correct. We have sold some equity. We've done some rounds internally to do that. We acquired some Bitcoin, but we are looking at other options in terms of how can we leverage up here, and certainly we'll as a board and a team, we look to execute as quick as we can here and aggressively as we can here that makes sense for our shareholders in the public markets. And so we have options in front of us, and we certainly, people look at what we're doing here. We are a leader in the space, especially in Canada. So, one of our goals is to, I hate to say be the Microstrategy of Canada, because we're going to be the liquid treasury play of Canada is our goal. But certainly MicroStrategy led the way in terms of what's possible. But we've always believed in Bitcoin and the balance sheet and encouraged other companies to do that, especially as you have this unique technology and unique time in history where this technology, which effectively is the internet, is growing at an exponential rate, and you'll never get a chance to do this again. And that gets into sort of, why Bitcoin and why our philosophies around it. And the company philosophies and mine, and why I got into early. So, I've been in internet tech since the mid 90s. And I would always ask people, say, what is Bitcoin? Like, well, it's money, it's hard money, it's a payment network, et cetera. And yes, it's all those things, but ultimately those answers are incomplete. Like, what is it really? What do you break it down? When you break it down, it is a trust protocol extending the very plumbing of the internet. Let's break that down a sec here. So how does the internet work? Well, if you're in this space, you'll know that the internet is made up of, effectively 7 technology layers. We call it the OSI stack. It's just a name. But if the layer 1 is the Wi-Fi, layer 7 is the websites, and there's other layers of technology that came about over time to make the internet work as we know it. And these all kind of came together in the 90s and what have you. So one of the things that Bitcoin fits in there is extends that very 7-layer stack. It adds a trust layer. We tried to do the trust layer back in the 90s. We failed repeatedly. And the discovery of how to figure it out with different technologies pulled together and the clever ideas around proof of work, et cetera, enabled a trust layer for the internet. So it's a trust protocol first and foremost, because at the end of the day, what is money? Money's trust. Payment layers of trust. It's all trust. And now you don't need a third party to act as an intermediary. And we extend that trust layer with multiple layers like Lightning or other stuff here, just like we extended the internet capabilities with other technologies that came about as we needed it. Now, when I look at it from a value perspective, I remember in 1999, we saw articles and people were like, the internet's worth $200 billion. And back then, if you had a .com in your name, the banks would potentially take your account away. The government wanted to regulate it and shut it down. We had the, Elizabeth Warrens of our time back then, and all those kinds of stuff until it was, signed into law that the president overrode it and said, we're going to let this technology flourish. It's important. But a lot of similarities. Why are there so many similarities? Because Bitcoin is a continuation of the revolution of the internet. And so a lot of companies back then, they embraced the internet. And why was Amazon so successful? For a lot of reasons, but ultimately they stayed upright and alive, and they let the internet carry them up at 100,000x, and just, it blew the doors off of everybody. Everybody who I talked to was like, why would I want email? Why would I want to actually shop online? I'll go to them. I'll go to them all. I'll do this. I'll do that. And it's just like, no, you don't understand. This is going to change every single aspect of humanity is going to change here with these this network here, the internet itself. Same thing for Bitcoin. And so, 1999, we say it's worth $200 billion. I think it might have been a Barron article. I can't remember exactly, but by, you get the iPhone moment coming out here. Suddenly people are like, hey, that internet thing we thought was a scam and full of hackers and, really, all the fraudsters and all that kind of stuff really scared us. Certainly, it scared a lot of people, but ultimately became extremely useful. And by 2010, we think the internet is worth $10 to $20 trillion. What is the internet worth today? What is the original, that 7 layers of that plumbing of the internet? What's it worth? Society runs on it. I don't know. $1 trillion, 500 trillion. I mean, it's like, pick a number. The number is off the charts and growing all the time because we are moving aggressively into the digital age. And so when you see Bitcoin as that trust protocol that extends the very plumbing of the internet, and I look at them like, let me get this straight. The technology is going to change the very plumbing of the internet. It's only worth $2 trillion, but it's going to change trust and money in the digital age for the next 200 years plus. I think we may have we haven't quite, we're still pretty early. And that's, that stuff could happen quicker than we think over the next number of years here because time is compressed. And ultimately, I pull back my own history and I remember the funny stories of, Yahoo going and sending engineers to Japan to set up Yahoo directory there. And the engineers had to take the hard drives on the plane because it couldn't send the data over the wire because would take forever. It's unheard of now, right? You went like, that's crazy. Why would you do that? But so time is compressed and things happen faster. And now we're moving into the age of, AI and robotics aggressively. And I think one of the things that we need to realize is like things like the Lightning Network and Bitcoin itself and other ways that will be used in the future that we don't even know yet. You'll have a machine-to-machine economy that's going to embrace these things. And I think the payment economy between machines for authentication, for validation, for any number of reasons, is going to be far greater than the payment network for humanity itself. And they need an instant network that has total finality. And there's no Visa or MasterCard in between. There's no third parties that can stop everything. It's just that trust protocol embedded into machines that machines can use to work in ways that we need them to.
How do you explain Bitcoin to someone? Are there any resources that you point to? And do you think it makes it easier if you point to a lot of what you just mentioned, like the internet, machine to machine, AI, robotics, things like use cases, I guess, that's not just digital gold, it's just sitting there not doing anything sort of idea?
People will use it as digital gold, they use it for other things, but certainly in terms of explaining Bitcoin, you can get very technical on all the proof of work and the mining, you can confuse the heck out of people. I think though some of the way that what I just explained here, my hope is with that is that people can understand why it's important. Because I think a lot of people are embedded in this thing like, if the government doesn't produce the money, why does it have value? And if it's not, if some authority hasn't stamped an approval on it, why should I believe it? And ultimately we're saying, well, the same thing was thought about TCP/IP, the communication protocol for the internet, that people thought it had no value. But ultimately it just marched along, and these kind of open source technologies, when they get to an inflection point, they take off and they're unstoppable. And that's kind of the way it works. So it really depends on the person, because some people are just not ready to be woken in there. Some people know there's problems in the world and they're not quite sure how to understand and where they should go. But if, in a perfect scenario, I'll be able to talk to someone and explain, a little bit of the hard money aspect, a little bit of stuff here that we can converse and talk about the debt problems in the world, and everyone knows there's inflation issues and stuff like that. And if they're interested in Bitcoin, I often encourage them to say, "Hey, look, get like a little BitAx, a little future bit miner. If you're into computers a little bit, it's not that complicated, and it will actually teach you because you have to do something, or even just get a basic wallet and open it, and it will send you some Sats by Lightning." And the light bulb will go on because they're forced to do something as opposed to just think about it. And so action is reinforcing. But then certainly, trying to explain that, hey, this is just a continuation of the revolution of the internet. And, nobody wants to get left behind. And the race is on to get that treasury right now, especially for companies like ours who can put that treasury potentially to use in other ways to earn, potentially earn more yield. But, that's kind of where we're at. So you're going to get a bit of everything. You're going to have some people who are just, and I had this back in the internet days, people were just like, oh, it's a big scam. They're scared of it. And a lot of it is that people can't get out of their own way because we're afraid and, or insecure, or we don't want to look stupid, or any number of things of human frailty that comes up to cause us to be unsuccessful or see where the future is going.
How would you approach the price bias, I guess you might call it? Like Bitcoin's $100,000 and people look at just that. Like, do you talk about sats? Do you talk about like the total addressable market? Do you go in through some other door?
Yeah, certainly, if you talk about the total addressable market, like, we think it's 2 trillion, but there's no reason it can't be 200 trillion. And people look at the price movement and fear, and, FOMO does kick in, and a lot of people get involved because price is a great advertisement for Bitcoin in itself. But there is some bias around. People are like, oh, it's so expensive. But then you explain, hey, you could just buy a bit and just buy a little bit every week. Just buy, if you can buy $50, $100 a week, doesn't matter. Just buy what you can, put it aside. You have, an immediate hedge. It's not going to cost you a lot. And they start to open their minds up to it and then start to get interested in it. But you're going to get people who will embrace it and some that won't. Some will get left behind, and like every technology phase, and the late adopters. But if they are uncomfortable with that and they want to get exposure to it, they're welcome to look at our company, LQWD, or some of the other companies that are out there, MSTR, et cetera, so they can get exposure in their in their retirement savings or tax-free savings account. I think it's called a Roth IRA up there. Well, I'm not sure that in America, but ultimately similar ideas. And that way they don't have to self-custody, et cetera. And we do encourage self-custody and a range of stuff here. But I remember there's a story I read, and it was interesting because I've seen this, where there's somebody, he gave away a little bit of Bitcoin to 10 people. This is back in 2014, I believe it was. And it came back, 8 years, recently, 8 years later, what have you. And 9 people who self-custody lost it, and the one person put on Coinbase still had it. So, you kind of have to work within a person's ability. And, it's taking someone who's just completely computer inept and trying to tell them how to, especially back then where it was really technical, not as easy. Still not for a lot of people, but a lot easier, is a recipe for maybe something that may not work. But those are lessons they learn, and it's just part of the journey, I guess.
This episode is brought to you by Arch Lending, the premier provider of crypto-backed loans designed for both individual and institutional investors. At Arch, your digital assets work for you without selling them. Arch offers flexible loan options tailored to your needs. Backed by industry leaders like Morgan Creek Digital, Castle Island Ventures, and Galaxy Ventures, Arch Lending is setting a new standard in crypto-backed lending. Are you ready to unlock the potential of your crypto assets? Visit archlending.com to learn more and configure your loan today.
Europe's richest Bitcoin heritage site, Prague. BTC Prague, the biggest Bitcoin conference on the continent.
Join us June 19th through the 21st for Bitcoin Prague 2025. Use code KOTSMAN when you buy your ticket at btcprague.com. Hey guys, today's episode is brought to you by Stampseed. If you're in cold storage, you know how important it is to protect your seed phrase. That's why I recommend you head over to stampseed.com and check it out for yourself. This seed phrase storage device is one solid piece of titanium. There are no loose pieces, and you can hammer your seed phrase in letter by letter. When you go to stampseed.com, use promo code TIM15 for a 15% discount across the website. That's TIM15. Can you walk us through the Canadian market versus the US market? You have listings both places. Are there obvious differences between the markets or anything to hit on there that you think is important?
Yeah. So, one of the parts of the Canadian market is, certainly the gold mining, silver mining, resource companies. This is the resource capital of the world. If you're a gold mining company and you don't have an office in Toronto or Vancouver, or they don't know about you, it's kind of like not being in Silicon Valley or it's right up there. Yeah, you could be successful and what have you, but ultimately, because of the way that junior gold companies is junior mining companies, in my view, that it creates a certain amount of risk tolerance from the capital markets up here. They understand how to navigate that for startups and junior companies that are going along, especially they consider, certainly a few years ago, young companies buying as much Bitcoin as they can as a junior company. Now it's becoming a lot more serious, but so I think the capital markets here are well suited for it. But now, and regulators here are able to deal with it in a different perspective. And the fact the first Bitcoin ETF was a Canadian Bitcoin ETF that came about for any number of ways. But and it kind of helped lead the charge here. And I think the banks here and the regulators here are respected, and they work closely with the U.S. regulators. But at the end of the day, the SEC and 80% of the world's money goes to New York. America is still the superpower. It does matter. America leads the way, and ultimately we want that because Bitcoin represents democratic values. And it represents, where we're going to go for the freedom chant, but certainly it represents the internet, represents true democratization of knowledge and now democratization of money. And I know there's a lot of, especially early on, there was a lot of Bitcoiners that were talking about, the U.S. government's going to collapse and we'll all live in citadels. And I was like, that sounds insane. like that's nuts. No, thank you. God bless America. Like we need a democratic strength out there for all of its flaws and all the things there. It's an amazing nation, and Canada's right along there, but we're really the younger cousin to America. We're much smaller, but we have, and I always look at our relationship with America as, it's kind of like the two brothers. You have the older brother. We look at America as the older brother. And, every now and then you go on a lot of adventures together, you do some crazy stuff, but every now and then your older brother turns to you and hands you a beer and says, "Hey, hold my beer, watch this." And you're like, "Don't do that. Mom's going to get really mad." And that's kind of our relationship dynamic between America. So sometimes Canada can be the voice of reason, and often the truth is somewhere between us. But as a Canadian who spent a lot of time in America, I'm very grateful, and we're very grateful to sleep under the eagle's wing. We know our what America offers the world. So to that note, I remember being on a Chinese television station, like probably 3 years ago. Time flies. Maybe it was not last, but and we talked about how they lost Bitcoin mining, and they really scared them off, and they all went to Texas and stuff like that. And I was thinking, this is great. But I went on there and I said, as right up front, I said, this will go down as this will go down as a huge geopolitical mistake in the future. And we'll look very poor on China here as they've lost the next, and the trust layer of the internet has gone to the democratic nations around the world. And it'll go down as a huge geopolitical mistake. Incidentally, they never invited me back. I have no idea why. I never called their leader Winnie the Pooh. But I have no time for communist nations. And let's see them continue to evolve and create freedoms for people.
How do you see this playing out over the next couple of years? Michael Saylor and probably others have called this kind of the digital gold rush. I guess what's kind of your view of this intersection of retail, being first and obviously still here, and now corporations and I don't know if you want to throw institutions in there, but it is kind of corporations, institutions, and nation states. What's, I guess, just your personal view on how all of this kind of comes together or continues to come together over the next couple of years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it'll come together in ways, they'll come together in ways we don't even know yet, and it'll be used in ways we haven't even seen yet, because the internet was used in ways we knew it was going to be important. We just couldn't even tell how it was going to be used. And there was a lot of naysayers back then too, like, oh, it'll never do this, it'll never do that, it'll never do this, and which was odd for me, because the tech community is always about solving problems. So problems and growth and scaling will be solved. And ultimately, there's the early adopters in retail that see it on, the early adopters of the internet that realize this is an important thing. They can get on there and do great things with it. And now institutions, but it's different from this phase where you see seeing, the barriers of, the banks and the regulations and all these things that take more time to break down. It's sort of like the final boss, where it has to be defeated to change. And ultimately the internet's changed everything else. But, it doesn't care. It just keeps marching along. It's, when technology gets adapted, it gets adapted because it's, usually 10 to 100x better than anything else that's been seen before. And once people realize just how great it is, it rapidly accelerates through that as quick as you can. So we are in a gold rush right now, in the sense that we have been for a while, because people will get Bitcoin at the price they can, and life will play out on that. But the internet will be extended, and we'll see other things, technologies built on top of it. So there is, we see 2 trillion quickly go to 200 trillion. I personally believe it's entirely probable. Can't give forward-looking statements as a public company, but we've seen this game before, where the value of the internet was quickly unlocked from 200 billion to 10 trillion inside of 10 years and beyond. And so I see the same thing playing out.
Could you give us your view on what Michael Saylor has kind of laid out as a framework for digital commodities, digital securities, digital tokens, digital currencies? Do you think that will kind of clean all of this up with the whole Bitcoin versus crypto, and crypto trying to be a commodity because it's not allowed to be a security without being sued? So then a commodity can be a commodity, and a security can be a security instead of a security trying to be a commodity. How do you view all that?
Yeah, it's a mess, right? Yeah, it's been a mess. And certainly, regulators are always behind technology. Technology is bleeding edge, will always push regulation, and that's the nature of it. But yes, he's got some, there's some great ideas around it. They'll probably be enacted, and they'll be adapted. And you also have these things like, isn't everything a security? Like, it's so easy to create a securitized anything in this day and age, but and other stuff like that. But we can't forget the lessons of our great grandparents going through the 20s and the 30s and all the things where banks could do anything they wanted, and one branch fell and the whole system collapsed. So there has to be some care in there, and respect given to history and stuff that our forebears went through. But it's going to help clean stuff up. You didn't get a lot of clarity from the former SEC, and who knows what politics are going on there. I'm Canadian, so it's kind of outside of my realm here, but you can see that it was a lot of back and forth, and it was a bit of a mess. So it should clean up a lot of that. It's going to make it clear for institutions, and you still, I think you're at this point here where there's a lot of people that, as Wall Street continues to embrace it and institutions continue to embrace it, they're going to get a lot more. They're getting more faith. They understand it, and this is kind of the nature of some people. Like, well, if it's good enough for Bank of America, if it's good enough for, some institution that we trust, and there's clarity, and our regulators have produced the stuff here, and the administration and the White House has produced clarity around it, then people are going to feel more comfortable with it. Whether we like it or not, a lot of people like to be told everything's going to be okay. And you have some people who don't need that, and they want to push the boundaries, but ultimately things are going to be okay. They're going to be better than ever. The technology, the birth of technology like this can be volatile and messy. The internet was volatile and messy until it stabilized, and still volatile and messy to a degree, but it's certainly a lot less. And you can see, potentially the price be somewhat volatile, but it's just the growth of, an incredible technology as people look at it. And one of the things I like about Saylor, I mentioned to him when I had a chance to very briefly meet him, the metrics that they've created for MicroStrategy are very interesting. And one of the questions that came to me from someone was like, well, they never crystallize it back into dollars. I said, yeah, because they're trying to give you a metric to understand how they're increasing their Bitcoin per share and continue to, motor forward during this time here. And crystallizing back into dollars is very counter to the Bitcoin ethos. I mean, ultimately, the dollar is melting and inflation is melting because we have bad policies and incredible debt. And the debt cycle was wildly out of control. As Lynn Alden was, saying that this train's unstoppable. And so, those are things that are around there that, we have an alternative mechanism that we can embrace here. So I think the next couple of years are going to be really exciting. There'll be lots of debate. There's going to be lots of great things to talk about, and huge opportunity for, potentially smaller companies to become great big companies by embracing Bitcoin and getting a lead over everybody else. So we know where we're going to go as LQWD. We have our sights clearly set here, and we're just going to keep working towards pouring it on.
Awesome. Well, Shone, appreciate you joining us today. I'll just throw it over to you if you have any closing thoughts, and if you could tell everyone where people can maybe find you and or the firm online.
Absolutely. So you can look me up on X, formerly Twitter, Shone Anstey. That's my user, ShoneAnstey. Happy to connect. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. The company is LQWD on the Toronto Exchange. LQWDtech.com if you want to look up more information, and keep an eye on us. And we're up here in Canada doing great things, and we're motoring forward. We're big Bitcoin believers, being in the space a long time, and we're looking to absolutely pour it on here.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, and we'll check back in with you from time to time.
Great. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks.